Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to what is no doubt going to be a very exhausting, a bumper, a stacked episode of the breakdown with your hosts, BaseDaKID, Tony, the pugilist boy. And I'm delighted to say that we are the children of the game. Now, Tony, how were you over the bank holiday? But keep it brief because we got a lot to get through.
Yeah, I was at the big event at the O2, as were you, and I was extremely happy with that. The rest of the weekend was very pleasant. I'm now on school leave, so yeah, I'm enjoying my time off. So let's ask, how are you, my brother?
I'm all right. I'm wondering that you're on school leave and still can't get here on time. It's the people in the chat is commenting on how we're late. So,
Well, I apologize. The show started 3 minutes late on my behalf. However, I did have things to do today. I do apologize. They did run over, but we got there in the end.
all
Welcome
right,
to
ladies
it
and
all.
gentlemen, what I want to say to you real quick, we can forego all of my how am I's because most of you will see me on my stream tomorrow. We'll get into all of it. We're gonna do the roll call as normal, but what I will say is because there is so much to get through this week, we're gonna have very minimal interaction with the chat. So like sorry if you post stuff and we don't get round to it, but yes, there is way too much stuff to sort of go through. To if we keep interacting, we'll be here until midnight. We've cut out a lot of good quality stuff to try and make sure that we got enough for you. But as always, big up to Jack Knight. Thank you very much for being in the building. Philip Answer, as always here. Big ups to Philip. Bigsy Biggs, Untraceables in the building. Jonah 31, big subscriber to the channel. Jam Down 187 is always here. Love to see it. Who else have we got in here? And Daniel J. Boateng, shout out to you. Hopefully some of the other regulars will be popping in, and obviously if we do see any names, we'll hell you up. But yeah, Tony, let's start off with where should we go? Snipe.genius, shout out to you as well. All right, I'll tell you where we start. Let's go Timzu, Sebastian Fowler. Let's start off with a nice big talking point. Go ahead, let us know your thoughts and everything that took place.
Okay, so didn't see the whole.
And combinations to control the match, but Fundora.
Oh no, bad. Okay, we got sound, so I'm gonna have to cut that one out. Didn't see the whole thing, but it was undoubtedly a fight with huge controversy in it. The cut that was received on the head.
Tony, one sec before you carry on. When you say you didn't see the whole thing, how much of the fight did you see?
I saw bits of every round, but I didn't see every round in completion.
All right, I'll tell you what. Let me start. You follow because I watched this fight quite intently. Now, because everyone knows it was PBC on Prime or Triller over here, and it was paid to watch. I didn't watch it live. I did try to avoid some of the results before watching the event. However, this was one of the ones that did kind of get spoiled when I was on YouTube. So I knew the result beforehand. And I'd seen obviously Timzu's face. I'd seen Sebastian Fondora's face. I was like, oh, okay, this must have been like a real back and forth scrap. So I was wondering, okay, how did this happen? Because I was very steadfast in my opinion that Timzu would knock out Sebastian Fondora inside 5 rounds. I said at maximum it was going 8. So I watched the first round, and the first sort of 15, 20, 30 seconds of the first round is very much Timzu trying to find his range, trying to find a way to get past those extremely long levers of Sebastian Fondora. And to Sebastian Fondora's credit, one thing that he was doing in this fight, he was leaning back, he was staying behind that jab, he was finally fighting like a tall guy, like the tall guy that he is. The only problem is because the way his jab arcs, it always arcs way too far, too low down. It's quite easy to get over the top of it if you're quick enough. But what I saw Tim Tszyu was doing, he was parrying the jab in front of his face to the side, parrying the jab over, stabbing to the body, and every time he would sort of get in, he would shoot to the body, he would get his foot on the outside, and then he would be lining up Sebastian Fowler, and he would just be attacking up top as well. He managed his first really big shot. Obviously, Fowler rolled underneath, and then as he was coming back up, Tim Tszyu launched into a big shot straight through the nose. That was the first of many in that first round. But then in the second round is when he really started going to work on Sebastian Fowler to the point where he could barely miss him. And it's weird because I don't want to disrespect the guy, but some guy on when I was on Boxing Beats and Rhymes' channel was trying to debate me about what happened afterwards. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But he was trying to tell me that the first couple rounds were nip and tuck, and I was like, I don't know what fight he was watching, because the first two rounds was all Tim Tszyu, very comfortable. There was very little that Sebastian Fowler was able to get off in those first couple rounds, until right at the very end when Tim Tszyu he goes to throw a hook, sort of a counter hook over the top from the left side, and as he's throwing, he sort of rotates in, but he ends up tripping over Sebastian Fowler's lead leg, and as he trips over the leg, and obviously drops head first, Sebastian Fowler turns his body, angles his body inwards, and with his protecting arm on the left hand side, catches Tim Tszyu on the top of the head with the, I'm not even sure if it was a point at the elbow, but it was between here and here. But with a guy with very little body fat, that there's just nothing but bone there, and it could maybe Tim Tszyu may have been a bit dry because he came in at like 152 pounds something, so maybe he didn't have a lot of sort of fluid still in the body. But what we do know is it split his head clean open. It wasn't just a cut, it was a huge gash which wouldn't stop bleeding. And then from round three, he still managed to do quite well, but you could see that blood just started pouring into his eyes, into his face. It just became a nightmare. You constantly see him trying to wipe away blood whilst trying to stay out of range of shots, but he's just getting jabbed at this point. Now he's just getting his head jabbed off. He's managing to obviously land some power shots here and there, and he's still managing to pick up some rounds and win some rounds. But just due to the activity, Sebastian Fowler, and staying disciplined and staying behind that jab, and making Tim Tszyu have to fall in, he managed to just about scrape through a victory, which was a split decision. I actually had it 6-6 when I was watching, but I could see 7-5 for Sebastian Fowler. So when looking at it, I can say that obviously based on the way it played out and the scorecards, everything, the right guy did win just due to activity. But when it came to obviously impact of shots and everything, it was very much a Tim Tszyu fight. Yes, it was very unfortunate that. And the thing is, I keep saying this, and people feel like I'm saying that Sebastian Fowler illegally hit Tim Tszyu, which isn't the case. It wasn't. He didn't illegally strike him, but it was a cut. It was damage caused by an illegal shot, because the elbow is an illegal part of the body to strike your opponent with. The same as with any other part that's not the fist. Not the back of the fist, or there. So anything outside of that is an illegal part of the body. As it was struck with an illegal part, which is what caused the damage, it made even less sense that the team decided to keep him in the fight. First of all, when you knew they couldn't stop that bleeding. Why are you going to let him carry on, knowing that he's either going to get weaker or potentially he can now lose a fight that he was in full control of. The whole thing just made no sense. But that being said, it did make for a good spectacle. Tony, what was your thoughts based on what you saw, the cut and everything, and how did you kind of see everything going? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Obviously, the cut was the focal point of the whole fight. You know, I did see the incident. Look, it's an illegal part of the body for a strike, but it's not a strike. It's just a coming together where somebody, unfortunately, who's got that height differential comes in and he manages to catch the top of the head of Tim Tszyu. The two fighters were a similar height. That never happens. But it's, you know, the differential in height, the fact that Tszyu's trying to get inside of the long levers of Sebastian Fowler, that it's an unfortunate incident. I wouldn't have, you know, as you see, that, you know, there wasn't a point taken away for an illegal blow, because it's not an illegal blow. It's just a genuine accident, you know. I like that Samson Letkowitz from Team Fundora have said, look, we've got a rematch clause in place. We will do nothing to do anything to spoil that, which I think is fair, even although Terence Crawford has been mandated to fight for this title. I think it's right that they run this again and they invoke that rematch clause. Obviously, once you go past the 4 rounds and you can't change the decision from being a points decision to a no contest, it then becomes a strategy of, well, can Tim Tszyu do enough to win the rest of the fight after having early success? And clearly he wasn't able to do that, you know, but he was slighted by the fact that he's got pouring blood coming down his head. You know, it's a bloodbath. It's unfortunate that, you know, the spectacle kind of goes away, but respect goes to both fighters, because ultimately they go on and they fight for 12 whole rounds. You know, it's an unfortunate situation, but let's just see where it goes from now. You know, this is where boxing politics comes into its own. You know, we're going to see whether the governing bodies can override the paperwork that exists for the rematch.
There's not going to be a rematch. I'll tell you. I'll tell you that now. Yeah, 100%. There won't be. Unfortunately, you can't take Samson Nukovic at his word because he's a habitual liar. Not outside of that, the WBO have already told that, look, paperwork is already in place for the next fight, which is Crawford and Fundora, and Crawford's not gonna step aside to let a rematch happen. It's not even like contractual, because the WBO wouldn't have been able to put that in if there was. Although, to be fair, look, the only other way you do it is you'd have to drop that WBO belt to give Tim Tszyu a rematch on the WBC, but he wasn't a WBC champ. He wasn't ranked for the WBC. Therefore, that wouldn't. I don't know if they'd be able to sanction that either, when they've also got a mandatory that needs to be ratified next, if not straight after the next mandatory. So yeah, yes, they could end up seeing each other maybe a year or two down the line, but outside of that, unless he drops both belts, that rematch ain't happening. And if he drops both belts, Tim Tszyu ain't gonna want to do the fight anyway, because he wants his belts back. So yeah, it's a bit of a shit time all around. And yeah, as I said, when it comes to it, I don't say it's an illegal, like it's an intentional. It was 100% accidental, but I just say it was caused by an illegal part of the body. Hence why it's like, it's an illegal. It was caused by illegal means, whether it was intentional or not. But yeah, unfortunate. But as I said, if it wasn't for that, I had no doubt in my mind that Tim Tszyu would have had him out of there within 5 rounds, because he was piecing him up in rounds 1 and 2, and Sebastian didn't actually make any adjustments. He just was able to capitalize on the fact that the guy couldn't see properly. which is obviously what he's supposed to do, and congratulations to him. But obviously his injuries were sustained by legal shots, by a legal part of the body. So we also have to give him credit for being able to battle through with the broken nose and, you know, all of that sort of blood stripping down there, but at least he can see. So yeah. All right, so sticking with that card, let's talk about Rolly Romero and Isaac Cruz. I will let you start this one because even if you haven't seen the whole thing, there's not really a huge amount we have to talk about. But go for it. Your thoughts.
Couple of comments in the chat regarding the last fight, Fundora against Tszyu. Someone in Fundora's camp says they're not going to Australia. Them American boys don't like getting on planes. I know Haney did it for Cambosos, but generally no. Errol Spence is looking for that fight. Fundora Crawford with Tszyu Spencer's co-main would be a nice thing, but Sporty Sport does agree with you, Base. Tszyu was on his way. Thank you to Jack Knight for the super chat. No questions from me, as you've got to keep things moving tonight. Big up the breakdown. Appreciate you, Jack. And Jay Land's in the house. Big up to you joining us on the chat as well. So we move on to the co-main, which was Rolly Romero versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz. Look, I'm just not a Rolly fan. I've never have been. I never will be. I just don't like the guy. Don't like the way he talks. I think he's just not a nice guy. But hey, that's a personal opinion on me. And you know, this whole thing about them mapping him as a two-weight champion just didn't stack up for me. So I was kind of looking forward to this matchup to see the real Rolly. Obviously got pieced up by Gervonta Tank Davis, and now it was a turn of Pitbull Cruz. And I was pleased to see that Pitbull Cruz was at his ferocious best in this occasion. Came out, and as you can see in the weigh-in, there was, you know, big attitude after Rolly was making up loads of noise, and Pitbull from the first round got into action, started ringing in, and gave Rolly the stanky leg, as you can see there. And then he finishes him off in the 8th round. Just all-out attack from Pitbull Cruz, coming in, throwing them big hooks, piecing up Rolly Romero, and showing us in the cold light of day what the truth is in relation to the credentials of Rolly Romero. In my estimation, overhyped fighter, never really... really world title material, even though he's won them. Very, very well selected opposition by his management team. But yeah, great win for Isaac Cruz. Looked good. And over to you, my friend.
I've not really got much to add. Everyone knows my opinion on Rolly, and the fact that he was able to make Isaac Cruz look like he was, like an Estrada or like a Chocolatito, just tells you how terrible he actually is. I've not got much nice to say about him apart from he managed to survive for 8 rounds. That being said, Isaac Cruz didn't put on as much pressure as he normally does. Maybe that is because it's his first fight at 140 and he wanted to make sure that he could handle the extra 5 pounds. But yeah, Rolly, every time he throws a shot, his chin's up in the air, which I've said before is extremely impressive because he has no chin. So the fact it's always managed to hang out, and there's nothing actually there to hit, but yeah, he always seems to get caught in sparring and in fights is a testament. Very, very well maneuvered in his first 16 fights. But yeah, he's terrible. And now the only problem is obviously now they've got that belt over at that 140 belt over at the PBC. I'm pretty sure there ain't no unification is going to be happening at any time soon. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to be now put on the bench up until the time when Tank Davis decides to move up there to take the belt to become a legit weight world champion. But yeah, not really much else to say on that one. I think my favorite part of the whole thing was Jordan Plant line of questioning at the end of the fight. You know, he's like, okay, well, you was talking all this shit. What happened? And he wasn't able to express what happened. So, you know, it is what it is. Yeah, exactly that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say on that. I mean, I don't know what he does next. I hope he, you know, actually no. Let me not say anything else. He's anyone who gets in the ring deserves some modicum of respect. But yeah, he can't get himself anywhere near world title pictures again. And the fact that he chose an undercard fight for maybe, or his team, I should say, chose an undercard fight for him for maybe a third or a quarter of the money he could have got to face Ryan Garcia, just goes to show that, you know, people don't love him really, unfortunately. Such is life.
Yeah. So untraceable, yeah, chin in the air, you know, just not great fundamentals by the part of Rolly Romero.
Who did you ban and what did they say?
It was a bot. There was some kind of advertising link to something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's move on. Unless you got more to add.
No, let's move on. Last
Right.
fight on that card that we did want to give quick mention to was the up and coming star from the money team, which is Molton, as you can see in the red and the yellow. He was having his next fight and did very well. One to look out for. How old is he? 18?
17.
17 even. Wow. I mean, this kid is special. You know, good little battle here. Over what was it? 8 rounds at featherweight with no. Over 8 rounds at lightweight with Anthony Cuba. And yeah, the skills gonna pay the bills. You know, a very exciting prospect that the money team have. You know, see some good hand speed, good movement, kind of like a Gervonta Tank Davis 2.0. He looks very much like Gervonta, and he does carry a bang. But in this situation, this fight went the distance. Very entertaining looking little fighter, and we look forward to seeing more of him in the future. So, where do you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I agree. He's very talented. I just hope he can stay the course. Looks like he can take a bit of a shot as well. Because he did get caught with a couple, but it's his third fight and his third undefeated fighter that he's fought. So whether or not they are on his level is not the point. It's the fact that they also didn't know what it was like to lose. He's not going in there against journeyman. Yeah, shout out to him. And he's only 17. I think that he's actually better than Devin Haney when he sort of turned over at that same age right now. But Devin obviously stayed disciplined. It's just about if he can. And if he can, he's got a big future ahead. So yeah, respect to him. Let's move over to the top rank card and let's talk of the main event of this. Let's go Oscar Valdez and Liam Wilson first.
Oh, okay. Give me a sec. Actually, you start.
Okay.
Down tomorrow, Friday, March 29th. From the
No.
Yeah. How did I? It couldn't be the breakdown without Tony doing Tony things.
All of these,
Right.
I tell you.
No, don't worry. Listen. Okay, so with this fight, the first round was actually it was a very nip and tuck first round. I enjoyed it. It was very much a case of Liam Wilson was actually boxing well and boxing from distance. And even though Oscar Valdez is the better technical boxer of the two, Wilson was using his height and his reach advantage, and he was, you know, he was walking Valdez onto shots, so which kind of troubled him in the first round. But the adjustment got made in towards the end of the second, and then throughout the rest of the fight, where for some reason Wilson decided to start giving up his advantages and decided that he was gonna get into a phone booth fight, which is exactly what obviously Oscar Valdez wanted. Now at the time, Valdez was obviously having some success from the outside and started to move in. And then I think Wilson thought, okay, well, because I stung him early, if I get in close, I can start taking it to him. But that's when the guy with the smaller arms was getting those hooks in a lot quicker, and a lot sharper. And yeah, he just kind of became a bit of a sitting duck, up, especially between sort of rounds 5 to 7, when eventually it was stopped. He took his lumps. He never dropped, which I got to kind of give him a bit of credit for. But ultimately, it was just a case of, yeah, the guy who wanted it more, the guy with the more experience in the pros, just sort of showed his extra level and his championship pedigree. It's pretty much all I've got to say about it. It was a good 7th round TKO. And I said that I didn't think that Oscar Valdez had any more fights at the elite level in him, even if he won this fight and gets the vacant title when Navarrete moves up. But maybe he's got 1 or 2 left, because he didn't take a huge beating or a huge amount of damage in this one. He still looked fairly fresh on top. So yeah, I'll give him props for that. A nice little scrap to start off the weekend. Can't complain. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much similar. I very much thought this was a nice little scrap between Liam and Oscar. Obviously, they're both, had a lot of respect for one another, to the point that, when the fight was over, Oscar and Liam had a talk, and Oscar was invited Liam to come and train with him. Said, really nice glowing things about him. The end of the fight, which is what you can see now, was in round 7. A huge attack on the part of Oscar. He had, at this stage, as you just so eloquently described, been through, some very tough rounds. But, he knew he had, the beating of Liam Wilson. And at this stage, despite Wilson being strong and not showing that he's hurt, Oscar knows when he can smell blood, and he's one of the best at doing that. And he was able to, see that there was a crack in the armory. And obviously he drops to his knees, because he knows, why is that guy still standing up? Why is that guy still in front of me? Because I have thrown the kitchen sink at him. And you can see on his face, the relief to win. And as you can see, they had a good chat after. Keep your head up. Come work with us. You're more than welcome. Great fight.
And the funny thing about when the referee jumped in, the last person to actually get caught in the exchange was Oscar Valdez. So it's always funny when you see that. But yeah, it was the right time to stop it. No complaints. Moving on from there, let's go over to the undisputed minimum weight bout, which was Casi Estrada against Yocosta Valle. For all the marbles, Ring Magazine, WBA, WBO, IBF, WBC, and the lineal title. This fight, I'm not gonna lie, I expected this fight to be a lot more comfortable for Casi than it actually was. She was the clear winner of the fight, and also she's not 2 inches shorter than Valle. She's actually, I think, slightly taller than her, so not quite sure where they got their measurements from. But one thing that I noticed, it looks like Yocosta Valle is a lot more comfortable at the 105-pound limit than Casi is now, because there was times in this fight she seemed a bit sort of sloppy, a bit tired, a bit lethargic, disengaged, but it was only due to her natural speed advantage over Yocosta that she was able to beat her to the punch at times. She also, to me, even though I know that she likes to switch a lot, I felt that certain times she was switching a bit too much compared to what she has done in previous fights, obviously trying to get those angles and those looks in. But yeah, overall, most of the exchanges she did win. And yeah, it just became a point where I think she got the best of her. She got sort of the best of the rounds in sort of the mid rounds. The first couple were sort of quite close in between, and then sort of rounds 5, 6, and 7, she did quite well in. And then sort of 8, 9, and 10 is almost where Yokosta sort of came back into it a little bit and made it look a lot more competitive. And obviously, some of the showboating from Sinisa there was it. She may have felt she was in control, and maybe the judges could have thought the same thing. But it was one of those ones, because it wasn't a dog walk, or I wouldn't have been doing the showboat in there just in case it cost me a round, which could have been crucial later on down the line. But luckily for her, it wasn't. I can't remember. I think I had it scored 96, 94 to Sinisa, but I was expecting it to be a 98, 92 type fight. And I think one of the scorecards may have had it like that. So, but yeah, it was a bit tighter than I thought it would be. She definitely will move up next, and it is needed, because I think the extra £3 is going to do a world of good and get some of her punching power back. What did you think of it?
Again, I only caught the highlights of each of the rounds, or most of the rounds. Sinisa looked like she was just doing her thing. The rapid change of footwork didn't look really comfortable, didn't really help her. You know, there are things when you can see, like Golovkin, who when he's walking and he switches right in stride of where a punch is going, or you look at Roberto Duran, who's one of the greatest of the, you know, sort of switchers. With Sinisa, it just seemed to be a little bit, I'm going to try something here, and it doesn't really work out with that. It creates an opportunity. You know, that's ideally what you want to do. If you want to switch, you want to create an opportunity while you switch, which it wasn't doing. But yeah, you know, the work rate seemed to come from Estrada. There was a lot of protestations from the camp, from Yokosta. Her manager was particularly upset in the ring at the end of the match, feeling that you know, she had won. But to me, I saw that as an Estrada win.
Okay. Do you want to? Actually, no. We'll just say shout out to Lindolfo Delgado. Good victory, and yeah, I think he just got a new contract off of that win as well. So well done to him. What is he now? 9. I think he's 19-0 with 16 KOs or something like that. Could be slightly different. So yeah, see where he goes moving forward. I can't remember if Raymond Muay was on that card as well, if he was on the last card they had, but he's also another one of their next crop out of the bag. So yeah, shout out to them. I guess briefly we can sort of move over to the cruiserweight division, where we had Arsene Gulamarian and Zurdo Ramirez taking center stage live on the zone at the same time of the PBC show. So Tony, talk to us about that one.
So again, didn't get too much of this one, but it looked like, you know, the two big boys, Zurdo and Arslan, were out there to try and, you know, knock each other out, 6 bells out of each other. It looked like an entertaining fight. Got some of the action from ringside. As you've seen, you know, look, they're standing toe to toe, you know, giving and taking, trading. Yeah, you look like a good fight. I'll leave it over to you to really dig into exactly how it went.
This should have been one of the easier ones for you to watch. What I'll say, all right, with this fight, as you can see there, a lot of it was basically Zurdo Ramirez sort of boxing in little small circles around Arsene Gulomarian, keeping his feet in range, beating him to the punch, hitting him with counters, especially that counter uppercut was one of his weapons of choice. And it was a really good gritty performance. He stayed in the pocket. He wouldn't be pushed back a lot. Gulomarian tried to have moments where he would try to overwhelm him. Then you would just see that guard come up. He would slip under some shots. He would throw the uppercut from the outside numerous times. He'd come over the top as well. He'd come around the side. He got hit a few times, but he rolled most of it. He never really got hit flush that much. But even when he did get hit, like, he showed he's got a good beard. Gulomarian also, like, showed that he's tough. He had good powers of recovery, but Ramirez never really tried to put his entire force behind any shots that I saw. He just wanted to sort of basically just box, like, strike cleanly, make sure that the shots are there, make sure that they're telling, put a little on it so the Arsenal knows you can't just walk me down. But outside of that, he never really fully, tried to throw his all behind it. And part of that may have been because he's still trying to make sure that he's comfortable with the 200-pound weight limit. But it was an action fight from round 1 all the way through to round 12. There was never more than, say, 2 seconds maximum without a punch being thrown. So the work rate was very good by Zurdo. And and obviously with Gulomarian just trying to be forward, he always making sure that he was that he sort of kept him honest, and he kept the pressure up. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the fight, and it really sort of put Zurdo back up in my estimation. Whereas before, I always used to feel like he just used to beat a lot of C+ and B- level opposition, and he wasn't really, he wasn't all that. But since the Bivol loss, the fight he had with Joe Smith Jr., he showed his boxing skills and abilities in that one, and in this one, he's also shown he's been able to box back foot, front foot, side to side, in the pocket, at range, and yeah, he's showing me more facets to his game. If he can keep it up, that would be good. He wants to unify, and I did hear Chris Billam-Smith basically said that one of his dreams is to go fight in America. So when I was suggesting on the boxing debate that possibly he could look at that fight, they could look at trying to tease Chris Billam-Smith to go over there. And initially I thought maybe they wouldn't because it's the zone, etc., etc. But Chris was on the boxing news show saying, yeah, he wants to go to America, and he would love to fight him once he sort of deals with Richard Riakporhe, his words. So yeah, if that unification can be made, brilliant. Then you can get Jair Patayo or Maris Bradus, try to unify with Noel Gavor. Then you can have a nice new undisputed champ at cruiserweight, which would be lovely. But yeah, really good performance. Really happy with it.
Cool.
Okay, so with that all out of the way, I guess we can all move over to the big boxer card that took place Sunday afternoon / evening. Since we've got time, I guess we can talk about some more, a couple of the fights on the card, and then obviously finish with the main event. So what I will let you do is I will let you choose where to start and give your thoughts, seeing as you was in attendance also.
Okay, so a couple of fights that the fights that I didn't see in entirety were at all, in fact, was the Alan Babich. I didn't arrive in time for that one. Do you want to talk about that one?
Not really a huge amount to say. I got there during round 2. I watched it back yesterday. Alan did what he does, although he was actually a lot more he employed a lot more feints than he normally did. Feints in the pocket, stayed on the chest. He threw it. He winged his shots in, but he didn't like put all of his body weight behind him like he used to. He was a lot more sort of composed. Did a lot of he had a lot of lead uppercuts on the inside, getting on the range of C. Robinson. It was a good Babich performance. Robinson didn't use any of his natural advantages, didn't use his jab, didn't use his reach. He basically just kind of was hunched over for the majority of the time, just inviting his chin to get hit. And after the second round, there was very little resistance coming back from him, to the point he was just taking shots like mercilessly. And it's amazing. It's a wonder why they allowed it to go through to the sixth. Even the shots that he was throwing back were barely arm punches, if you even want to call it that. The fight could have been stopped in the third. It could have been stopped in the fourth. It didn't need to go 6 rounds, to be honest, because it wasn't competitive. That being said, I always like to watch Alan Babich. He's one of those guilty pleasure fighters. I have no illusions of his level or where he will go, like in the mainstay. But in terms of having him on the card, I'll always support, because he's highly entertaining.
Cool. So yeah, schoolboy error from Tony, missing the Savage. But after his battering out in Poland, I wasn't really too worried about him. I don't feel he's now got the stock for me to be worrying about what he does, especially when he's competing at heavyweight, when he isn't really a heavyweight. Anyway, we move on. Next on the card, let's talk about Callum Simpson fighting Dula Mbabe. This was super middleweight. 13-0 Callum Simpson was fighting 34-13 Dula Mbabe. It was a scheduled 10-rounder for super middleweight. It ended quite hastily in the 4th round. A little bit of footage for you to take in. Which one is it? So Callum Simpson building up a bit of a name for himself with 9 stoppages in his 13 previous fights. Obviously, he's now going to be talked about in glowing terms by people in the trade to see where he can go next. Vicious uppercut there to start the damage on Mbabe. And then the overhand right puts him to the floor, and the referee has seen enough at this point. It was pretty much all one-way traffic for the 4 rounds. Base?
Well, I wouldn't say it was one-way traffic. Then Mbabe caught him with some very good body shots and some decent shots in the first 2. He only really started to take over in the 3rd and the 4th, obviously, where the KO happened. It was a fine performance. Callum Simpson, it wasn't supposed to be a big test, because he's got the Zach Chelly fight in the summer, supposedly, for the I think it's the British title at super middle. So yeah, good run out, good highlight for the highlight reel. No complaints.
Cool. Next fight on the bill that I'll talk about. I've got loads of footage of this fight, but I didn't upload any of it because I didn't think it was worth. We weren't going to originally talk about it anyway, but it was, of course, Vidal Riley versus Mikel Lawal for the English cruiserweight title. Obviously, Lawal had lost to Isaac Chamberlain in his last fight. Vidal is on a high, 6 knockouts in his 10 fights prior to this. This was pretty much a boxing masterclass on the part of Vidal Riley. He literally just outboxed Mikel Lawal. We found out later on in the night that Vidal Riley had sustained some damage to a rib in the first round, and that seemed to hasten about his willingness to engage in close combat with the very strong Lawal. The problem is Lawal has awful footwork. I've said this over and over and over in any conversation I have in and around the conversations about Mikel Lawal. He's a strong lad. He's a hard trainer, but he just has very limited footwork. And if you're going to be successful in this game, you can have very strong punches, but if your footwork isn't going to match what you do with your hands, you're going to be in trouble. And essentially, Vidal was able to step in, do his damage, and walk away. Step in, do his damage, and walk away. Circling round, creating angles, moving his head very well, and having his way, literally, by just outboxing Mikel Lawal on the back foot. He did engage with him from time to time. He did step in and launch, some very hard attacks on Mikel. But Mikel, as we know, as we've seen with battles previously, is a tough cookie. He's not ever one to sort of go down and he's a very strong kid. So Vidal did the right thing, instead of saying, let me go all out for a knockout. No, let me do what I have to do. Let me protect my rib and box this guy for the entirety of the 10 rounds, and he won that comfortably. Your comments?
Nothing to add. Shout out to Vidal Riley. Made it comfortable. Don't know where they gave 2 rounds to Mikel Lawal from, but I had it a whitewash ringside. Very composed, very comfortable. Like to see more in the next fight, but shout outs to the realists.
Cool. So we just check. I haven't got any chat. So flat-footed, says Jack Knight. Right, so we move on to the entertainer, Ben the Surgeon Whitaker fighting Leon Willings. Leon Willings, if you didn't know, was or is currently the Central Area light heavyweight champion. So he's got some pedigree. And it was a very entertaining fight. I thought 7-1 Leon Willings against a 6-0 Ben Whitaker, and for those that were there in attendance, I think most of the crowd around me thought this was an entertaining fight. I've got some thoughts on the development of Ben Whitaker. People are talking Ben Whitaker up and saying, "Oh, why is he fighting this fighter and why isn't he fighting, Aziz and other prominent light heavyweights in the UK?" Well, quite simply, this fight showed and exposed flaws in his game. He looks good. He can showboat at this level. Do I not like the showboating? Hell yes, I love the showboating. I love it. I've loved showboaters, Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, Julius Augustus, you name it. There's been a host of showboaters, in my time watching boxing. And as you know, that's a very long time. I have seen a plethora of showboaters and I love every single one of them. So what he brings to the table, you see the slipping, the countering, the dancing, I'm happy with it. I'm happy to see all of that. If you can do it, good on you. Well done to you, But at the end of the day, skills pays the bills. You've got to do what you got to do to win fights. And so far, he's shown that he's capable of winning fights. And as you just saw, Leon Willings wasn't just a flat-footed punch bag for Ben. He did fire back. He did hit Ben with some very good shots. He was fairly decent with his defensive work in certain circumstances. But obviously Ben is going through the motions, and as you can see, he's able to sort of pen Leon in and then just find his shots where he can when he needs to. The failings that I see in Ben, the work rate, he obviously needs to work on work rate. This is a 10-rounder. But he has a lot of time. 8-rounder, excuse me. He has a lot of time out in this fight. He spends a lot of time, prancing, looking, and you kind of go, well, would this work against somebody who will pressure you for 10, 12 rounds? you're not, there are certain fighters where you just wouldn't get that kind of space, that kind of time just to go, oh, I tell you what, I'm going to have 30 seconds off to catch my breath and do what I want to do. So there's definitely question marks about his engine as far as I'm concerned. But he's got good sharp punches, he's obviously not a destructive puncher, but that's not a problem. Some of the best world champions, some of my favorite boxers were never hard-handed. Floyd, after he moved up, was not hard-handed. Pernell Whitaker, not hard-handed. So I'm really not that worried about his lack of a knockout in this fight, even though he does catch Leon with some really good, strong overhand rights, and he picks some great shots. But, that's just, things to work on. Can he do more to be more of a finisher when he gets an opponent in trouble? Yeah, I'm gonna leave the rest of this footage for you to talk about and give us your feedback on in base.
No, look, everyone knows my thoughts on Ben when it comes to him, when it comes to skills, the ceiling, the showboating. The one thing I will say is I know he said in the post fight that he kind of let Leon hit him a few times. There was a couple of times there when I agree, but I think it's more a case that he got caught with some stuff that didn't hurt, but the fact he got caught with it in his brain, it sort of told him in a split second, snap, I got caught. I need to do something so these people don't think he had success. So a lot of the sort of the playing about after getting hit by certain shots, I feel like may lessen the impact of those shots to the public. Then obviously there was a couple others where they just literally got through. In terms of the fight itself, I feel like he won every single round, even the rounds where he got hit. He still outlanded and outpunched and walked Willings down. So I don't know where the ref managed to find 2 rounds to give Leon in this fight. But funny enough, when I saw him at the media workout, he looked like he was punching a lot harder than he ended up punching in this fight. So I don't know if that maybe a little bit was lost between that last bit of making weight from the workout up until then, or as you said, maybe Leon is just a bit better at riding some of those shots than we thought. Obviously he came, I won't say he came to win, but he definitely came to kind of expose Ben, quote unquote, and he managed to show that that Ben isn't invincible, he's not infallible. There is work still to be done, but Ben is in the process of, I guess, looking for a new trainer, or at least going to train with other people. So the future's still bright. Maybe some people feel like he needs a much sterner test now to keep him sharp and switched on. Maybe that is the case, or maybe you keep him here and you give him another 1 or 2 like quote unquote knockover jobs just to get the flow and the momentum before sticking him in a real test. I don't know. Either way, must watch TV because the fight was entertaining. It was probably more entertaining than it was expected to be, and he is as they say, box office on regular TV. So shout out.
Yeah, and in response to Sporty Sports' comment about Beterbiev's fighting, a good fighter in his 6 pro fight, that can happen, but Beterbiev's amateur pedigree is phenomenal, not to say that Ben hasn't got that pedigree, obviously a silver medalist in the Olympics himself, but, there's no need to rush him. There is absolutely no need to. There's a log jam of fighters right now waiting for June 1st when Beterbiev fights Bivol. He doesn't need to get himself in amongst that mix and be sat waiting on his bum for an opportunity when he could be just still marinating, working on his fundamentals, seeing what he needs to do to make sure that when he does ascend to that level, he's well prepared. So let's enjoy the ride. That's what I say. Enjoy the ride while we got it.
Shout out to Danny with the $5 super chat. Would you guys ever consider covering bare knuckle fights? I feel like it's gaining popularity in the UK. Thanks. I would, if this is me speaking. Obviously, Tony may have a totally different view. I would, if it was a slow week, and maybe there was like maybe an Xbox or something in there that was well known in that sense. But if it's a week like this one where we've had to cut out a whole load of fights, it wouldn't have a place. But yeah, on a week where maybe there was one event card and then there was like a BKFC event, I'd be open to it. But maybe Tony has a different opinion.
No, I don't see a problem with us talking about it if we know about it. Unfortunately, I really don't follow the game at all. I do know of the BKFC, but I don't watch any of it whatsoever. Obviously, if it gains sufficient traction, out there, and I should find myself watching some of it. And if you want to cover some of those fights, even though I don't watch it, I've got no problem with it. We come along here week in, week out, and there's fights that I cover that you haven't watched, and vice versa. So it wouldn't be an issue for us to cover it if it, as I said, gained sufficient traction, and either of us thought there was particular bouts that we could talk about.
All right, let's get into that co-main.
Cool. So co-main was Florian Maru defending his IBO Intercontinental Welterweight title against Chris Congo. This was stirred with passion, and they had numerous opportunities to talk to one another before the fight was officially announced. There was a lot of bad talk between the two, bad blood, so to speak. One thing I will say, credit to Florian Maru, he has a traveling army of supporters. That arena was full of Albanians, and they made a lot of noise. But good work by Chris Congo. He came out. If I get my scorebook. He came out in this fight, and he meant business. He was very serious in the prelims coming up to this press talk. Saying that he had the skills to pay the bills, that Maru wouldn't have what it took to beat him, and so that was to be the case. In the early rounds, Florian was very aggressive to Chris's boxing style. Chris, you could see, wanted to use his boxing skills, but Florian was closing distance very much. And in my early rounds, I was slightly concerned because I felt Chris was holding on too much, and I think he did get a warning or two from the referee about his holding. So in the first couple of rounds, I gave them to Maru. He just managed to close distance sufficiently and unleash his power punches onto to Chris at both body and head. As you can see, he kind of launches in with his attacks, and he was able to do that quite effectively in the first 2 to 3 rounds. But after that, Chris really seemed to have found his feet. It took him a couple of rounds to download the timing, and then you can see, Chris is now in his boxing mode. He's moving lovely. He's established the jab. He's able to catch Maru. He's able to read when Maru's going to come in with an assault and move his feet appropriately. And he's just really in dominant mode now, as he's able to catch Maru with his 1-2, using his length advantage quite well. And he literally dominated the rest of this fight. There was a punch missing from Chris. He kept throwing the 1-2, 1-2, and I was saying to my friend that we were sitting watching this, that when he does find Maru with the 1-2, what he misses is that third punch. And I may have mentioned this before. AJ has the same problem. Fighters who fight using the 1-2 but without throwing the third punch. It's the third punch which is the one that causes a lot of the damage. And if you're a fighter who can create opportunities for the fourth and the fifth punch, that's really where it makes hay. You know, he throws a beautiful 1-2. He connects with the backhand, but then there's a missing left hook. And when he did throw it, it was a very effective punch. And the punch that I kept asking for him to throw was the right uppercut. And that, to me, was the key punch. You know, when you see him ever launch the uppercut, it's a beautiful shot. And it catches Maru, you know, ducking into it. And it lifts him off his feet. And Chris was very effective in boxing, you know, the legs off of Maru. Round 8, Maru received a point deduction from the referee for rabbit punching. As you can see, you know, a lot of Maru's punches are now just hitting midair. Yeah, he does get in close, but you know, as and when he does get in, Chris is very clever to tie him up and make sure he's not able to do any damage. At which point Maru was throwing rabbit punches. So he got the point deduction in round 8. Maru came out in round 9 after having that point deducted and was very aggressive in round 9. But round 10, Chris, you know, was very effective in finishing the fight off. I had the fight scored 96-93 to Congo. Your comments, Base.
I had it scored wider. I had it 2-2 after the first 4, and then after that I gave everything to Chris Congo. The only thing I will say, because I thought it was obviously a great performance. He kept the distance. He did what he needed to do, and he showed ultimately that skills do pay the bills in this sense. I heard that Maru maybe injured his right hand at some point during the fight, but he was already on a hide into nothing at that point. Maru's arrogance to believe that he could box with Chris rather than trying to just find his way to get on the inside and be rough and ready to sort of break him down is kind of, to me, how I knew that Chris would win. Because if Chris will stand there and just look to probe with the jab, move about, have a bit of a boxing match, Maru would try to almost time him. He would try to show that he can box with him, which he just can't. The one issue I had with Chris's performance, and it's not even so much him, it's like it looked to me like he was throwing a lot of power or a lot of his body into quite a few of his shots, and they were just not having much effect. So I'm starting to wonder whether or not that 147 weight cut is starting to take effect, because there's many times I saw him throw a shot which looked like it should have had a lot of mustard on it, and it didn't. So yeah, outside of that, I thought it was a very good performance, and obviously third time's the charm. He finally got sort of vindication to show that he belongs in and amongst the British contingent. And there's a lot of good domestic fights here for him. I'm sure he can get another shot at the British title now, and hopefully that will, you know, he can win that one. But more than anything, I think I'd like to see him move up if he's. I think he's tight at the weight personally. But yeah, I had it 91-98 to Chris Congo. Great performance. You know, one of obviously disturbing sports, so one of the people that the channel does champion. Had a great chat with him before the fight, as most people here would have seen. Yeah, and I'm just happy that it all came together for him, and he just showed his levels, and someone showed up Florian Maru for the limited fighter that he is, although he is, very strong, and he does have a very strong contingent when he fights. So shout out to Chris, if you're watching, big up. Now, with that being said, Tony, let's get to the main event.
Yes,
the stuff that everyone wants to talk about.
Yes, indeed.
I know you're heavily invested in this one, so go for it.
So just before we get there, just want to finish off with a comment from Sporty Sport. Congo versus Conor Benn would be interesting. On a lack of punch repertoire, Vlad Klitschko reigned for 10 years with just a 1-2 for a sole lead left hook. Yeah, and I'm not saying that you can't gain a living from having a good 1-2, but this game is very difficult when you don't have the rest of the punches in your repertoire and you're not able to use them. So you'll make your life harder by just having the 1-2. You'll make your life easier by learning how to throw the 1-2-3, the 1-2-6. In fact, interestingly, when I look at my scoring for Fabio versus Fraser, it's some great combination work going on in this fight. I'll move on to that now. Here we go. So, Fabio Wardley versus Fraser Clark. 17-0 Wardley from Burton against 8-0. 17-0 Fabio Wardley from Ipswich. Against Fraser Clark. 8-0 from Burton. 6'5" Wardley against 6'6" Fraser. Fraser came in at 19 stone, Fabio at 17.5 stone. And this was for Fabio's British Commonwealth and WBO European title. And yeah, what a fight. What a fight indeed. The house was full up. The house was full up. Obviously, I was pleased to go because it's been a while since I've seen the O2 full to the brim the way it was. And clearly Boxer, they've got very limited amount of fighters that they know could have utilized to fill the arena. But, this was very much I felt like an even split in the crowd, especially in the stand that I was in, between Wardley and Fraser Clark fans. Wardley obviously has a very vociferous Ipswich Town Football Club following, and Fraser, I was sat in amongst some of the guys that had come down from Burton to see him fight. But yeah, in terms of the fight, very, very entertaining fight. Fraser Clark established himself from the get-go, round one, with big right hands towards the end of the round after having a sort of a jab contest between the two fighters in the early part of the round. But Fraser won that just marginally with the last exchanges in the last 30 seconds of that first round. Second round, I noticed that was the round when the blood started to pour from the cut on the nose of Fraser Clark, of Fabio Wardley, excuse me. And then what I have here noted is that Fraser started using the 1-2-6, which is the left, right, and the uppercut combination. He seemed to be able to judge distance really well when he needed to, and fought the attacks of Fabio, excuse me, and he just seemed a little bit more in control, a little bit more polished in the work that he was doing. Now, from ringside, from where I was based, a lot of punches seemed to be catching Fraser. But when I watched this fight back, I noticed that significant number of the punches that I thought had landed didn't in fact land. As you can see, there was a big right hand there, the big ooze from the crowd, but actually it missed Fraser. It just literally whistled in front of his nose, but it didn't catch him. Whereas Fraser, as you can see, he's got that jab landing clearly in the face of Fabio. This is a very good technical matchup between the two fighters. Again, Fabio going for that big right hand, and there he gets that lovely uppercut into the face of Fraser. There's some very good exchanges going on in the early rounds. But to me, Fraser won the second round. Again, he seemed to just have the cleaner work in the second round. In the third round, again, I gave that round to Fraser. He mixed up again the 1-2, the 1-1-2. He started to deliver some telling body shots. to Fabio, and again I had that as a 10-9 round for Fraser. In round 4, more of the same. Good round for Fraser, but Fabio is still in this. You know, it's not like these rounds are easy. I think the action that you can see here is from round 5, where Fabio, there you go, comes on the attack. He absolutely starts pummeling Fraser with the 1-2, and then he follows it up with the straight right, double right hand to floor Fraser in the corner there. Great combination from Fabio, and that one is round 5 where he wins it 10-8 because of the knockdown. Round 6, I gave that back to Fraser Clark. I felt he did again, just got back to the basic, got back to the fundamentals, the 1-2, the 1-2-3, the one on the uppercut, the one on the body shot, you know, just picking his shots really well. But round 6, Fabio did finish the round very strongly. So I scored the first 2 minutes to Fraser, but the 3rd minute went to Fabio, where he again launched a blistering attack onto to Fraser. But it was at this point that the referee started giving a warning to Fraser for hitting below the belt of Fabio. So I know I heard someone mentioning they didn't know why Fraser gets a point deducted, but in round 6 was the point in which the referee started issuing, or I noticed anyway, that the referee was issuing verbal warnings to Fraser about the low shots. And then in round 7, he actually gets deducted for a low shot. Now, interestingly, you know, round 7 was again a very high active round. You know, I gave that round to Fabio. He was getting in with his 1-2s very, very well. Couple of uppercuts got in very well, and then he started to unleash a body attack to Fabio, to Fraser, excuse me, and that was a 10-9 round. But because Fraser received a point deduction, obviously that's a 10-8 round. Round 8 is again a very high octane round, but you can visually see that Fabio is having to let it out. You know, he's literally he's blowing heavily. He's having to go into his reserves in order to launch his attacks, which, you know, he does in this round. You know, again, good combinations of the 1-2 and the body left right, but Fraser is just again just hitting and using his combinations, I felt, a little bit more effectively in round 8, and I gave that round to Fraser Clark as a 10-9 round. Round 9, that's a swing round. You know, again, both combatants are unleashing good combinations to each other. You know, Fraser with the 1-2, despite being Fabio with the 1-2s, despite being very tired. He just summons up this energy to, you know, he looks like he's getting battered, and then all of a sudden he'll come out and he'll start with the 1-2 and he'll force Fraser back onto the ropes and start giving him some punishment. But again, you know, as I said, this round 9 is a swing round. You can go either way. Round 10, I gave that round to Fabio as well. Again, good action on his part. Just seemed to up the ante. Somehow, I think Ben in his corner. Why can't I remember his surname?
Ben Davidson.
Yeah. I think just told him, look, you know, you got to up the action in round 10, and that's what he did do. Referee did stop the fight midway through the round to let the doctor see the nose damage from Fraser onto Fabio. But yeah, an exciting round. I nipped it to Fabio, 10-9. Round 11, again, very exciting round. 10-9 to Fabio. Round 12, again, very exciting round. Well, not as exciting as previous round, but I felt that Fraser did enough in that round to win it. But one of the things that I'm pleased to say was, you know, look, this was an entertaining fight. Some have labelled this fight of the year. Both guys showed their frailties in this fight. You know, both showed their frailties. I'm sure there will be other fights as this year goes on that totally eclipse this fight as fight of the year. But for what it was a very entertaining fight. You know, a guy got hurt, you know, he got up off the floor and he got back into the fight and he was able to win rounds. Another guy had facial damage to both eyes and his nose, was bleeding profusely, but yet, you know, despite being winded heavily, was still able to compete all the way into the 12th round. There's a argument for either fighter to have won this. There's a genuine argument for either fighter to have won this. Round 9, a pivotal swing round, as I said. I had this at the end of it. I had this 114 to 113 to Fabio. I thought on the night that Fraser had won this by a couple of rounds. I really did. But in hindsight, having watched it, I'm going to go, you know, by 1 point to Fabio. Your thoughts, Base?
Yeah, I watched it. Funny enough, I definitely think it was better in the arena than when I watched it back. Although that being said, not by a huge amount. It's not like how it felt lackluster. But if anything, watching it back on YouTube, I had it even wider to Fraser Clark than I did initially when I was in the arena. I had it scored 4 rounds to Clark after the first 4. Obviously gave Fabio the 5th round with the knockdown. It was one of those ones. I even brought it up in the post fight. I said it looked a little like you slipped. You know, how much of that was the case, and do you think that was obviously a contributing factor to not being able to win? He said, no, a punch definitely did land, but yeah, my feet weren't totally under me as well. But it was definitely a knockdown. So that gave him the 5th, gave him the 6th, gave Fraser the 7th, gave Fraser the 8th, gave him the 9th, and then gave Fabio the 10th and the 11th, and then gave Fraser the 12th. However, looking back on it, the 10th round and the 11th round, Fabio had good moments in those rounds, like very high level, like very damaging moments where his punches obviously affected Fraser a lot more, but he got outlanded in those rounds also, and he got hit with some very flush shots, especially the uppercut. So in hindsight, I could have had both of those rounds either 10-10s, or I could have even put both of them in Fraser's way, in which case I could have quite easily have had the fight 116-110 to Fraser Clark. But yeah, ultimately I had 8 rounds to 4 to Fraser on the night, and I'm still happy to keep it that way. Now, the 12th round, I said that to me was the pivotal round, because that would have either been the draw for Fabio or it would have been the win for Fraser, and I just edged it to Fraser for doing just a bit more than Fabio, who obviously had a bit of a strong salvo right at the end of it. But yeah, in terms of, like, Fraser was very sharp early on. That jab couldn't miss. Obviously, he must have been studying Fabio Wardley, and the fact that when he tries to evade shots, he always dips a certain way. So Fraser just pretty much had that on lock pretty much all night, and anytime he dipped in that way to avoid a shot, boom, uppercut lands, and it lands flush. Fabio's definitely the harder puncher of the two, but I also think that that's partially because he throws more of himself into each shot than Fraser does, which is why I feel like even though both of them would, like, dead tired at the end. There was it looked a bit more as if Frazier in the rounds himself had a bit more going, whereas every time Fabio would throw shots in those later rounds, it really looked like he was having to muster energy from somewhere, whereas Frazier's shots still looked like they was coming out fairly more comfortably. That's why I would sort of say in that. But the one problem with Frazier Clark is that he doesn't have any level changes. He doesn't have any gears. Everything is one pace. It's first gear and second gear. There's no third. There's no fourth, fifth, sixth. Like he can throw one shot, but then he can't follow up with a second. With the, if he throws the jab, he can't throw the straight behind it. He can't throw the left behind that or the uppercut. Everything is always a lead shot, whether it's the lead jab, whether it's a lead backhand, whether it's the lead uppercut. And then as soon as he goes into that mode, next thing he has to almost get a breather, because after those first 4 rounds, everything was the clinch, everything was the hold to try and conserve a bit of energy, to get a bit of energy back, or sometimes I don't know how much of it was intentional spitting out of the mouth of the gum shield, but I know that he was getting breathers from that. So the cardio's got to be worked on if he wants to get anywhere above where he's at. And as for Fabio's got to work on his defense, hand placement. He, I asked him in the post fight, you said that you'd like to visit the dark place, but you had an extended stay there. Like, realistically, how many times can you do that? And he even said, look, you can't have many fights like that. And I accept that. So I'm not planning to have another one like that for a long time. But one thing, he showed that he's got heart. He's got that proper heart, and he's got determination and grit and guts. And then Frazier showed that he can go at the distance, but I feel as if he had more to prove in this fight than Fabio did. And I feel that Fabio kind of came out with more credit, in my opinion. Maybe Frazier has to work on turning his shots over a bit more, throwing more of his body weight behind him, because you're virtually 2 stone heavier than the guy. Make that count. And if you can't make it count, then try and lose some of that extra bulk to get more snap and more purchase on the shots, or to be able to do that second, that extra stage, that extra phase of attack, the go from gear 2 to gear 3. Maybe even if you can get up to gear 4, if you have to go back to gear 1 afterwards, okay, but get up there. So it's kind of, that's my thoughts on it. As you said, both guys showed their frailties and their and their limitations within the fight, but they also both showed heart, desire, and grit. So big shouts out to them. And a draw, I feel like I still gave it to Frazier. I still think he won the fight legitimately, but it was one of those fights where you wouldn't really like to see anyone lose it. So the draw was probably the best result. But then the only problem is neither guy are really, as much as they would do it again, and we'd like to see it again, but it's one of those ones where it's like, that's not the kind of fight you want to see back to back with 2 fighters, because there's only so many of those that you can have in your career, and that's definitely taken at least 3 years off of both of their pro careers, whatever age they was going to fight to. Guaranteed, if Fabio was going to fight to 37, now he's maybe going to fight to 34, and Frazier he might fight now to 35 instead of 38, so he might only have 3 years left. It's one of them ones, like, if you have another one of those, they could be like real career, maybe not enders, but they're definitely going to be much, much shortened. So, but it was a good fight. It was a very good event. Big ups to both guys. Appreciate the spectacle they put on, and it definitely was fight of the night. So they did save the best till last, and congrats to them for that.
Yeah. So Walid says it was a decent card in the end. Yeah, you know, as I said, full house. Each of the fighters that came with a very big supporting crew. You know, there wasn't a fighter who was fighting that you thought, well, where's your supporters? Everybody had some modicum of support, and that made for a good overall evening of entertainment. The other thing that I could say, there were no gaps. There were no big gaps in between fights. You know, a fight would end, the next fight was on very shortly after. You know, I know that because at no point in time was I allowed given time to say, "Oh, let's go up and get a drink." I just ended up sitting in my seat all night long watching boxing, and I prefer that. If you're honest, I like a drink, but you know, if I had to suffer and just wait until the end before I get a drink, which I was able to do with some of my very good friends over at the Aurora. Good to see some of the guys over there, Dillian White included. But yeah, it was a great event. Well done to Boxer. Obviously, I have mentioned it in one of our chat groups that Boxer have got very limited access to boxing right now. That obviously, a fight like that wasn't able to catch a pay-per-view. They haven't got anything that could catch a pay-per-view in the next 2 months. They've literally just got Jessica McCaskill versus Lauren Price, and then Lawrence Okoli coming up after that. So they're limited, whereas everybody else is having fights every other week. It looks like. And boxing really are struggling with their roster of fighters to get the matchups. Obviously, they announced the potential of a Harlem Eubank versus Adam Azim fight, which I believe has been signed today. I saw that on Twitter X. So look, they're not going to be big players. But when they do things like what they did this weekend and they can put together a decent roster of fighters on a single card, I'm all for that. I'll go to small hall fights. I don't mind going down to York Hall and seeing a Sauerland show or a, Hennessy sports show. I'll watch boxing anywhere. I'll watch two guys boxing in the back garden. If it comes down to it. So the more boxing we see, the better. Well done to Boxer on that card. Base?
I've got nothing else to add. Anyone who wants to know any more of my thoughts can watch the casual stream tomorrow. I'll answer any further questions there. This
in the chat, there's a few questions fired at you in the chat from Walid. Don't know if you want to address any of them.
As I said, join the casual stream tomorrow for any further questions, and we will answer there. We've been going for an hour and a half. It's time for us to shoot off. So yeah, unless you got any final thoughts, we can sign off.
Great. Enjoy your weekend. What, have we got anything this weekend? It's a quiet weekend.
Yeah, you've got Richardson Hitchens on this weekend.
Okay.
On the zone.
Might leave that to you. But yeah, thanks very much, people, for tuning in.
What do you mean you'll leave that to me? You'll watch it like you're supposed to watch it.
Of course I will. Of course I will.
Yeah. I'll leave that one to you because I'll be watching WrestleMania.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to you. Tony, give them the socials so that they know where to find you.
Yeah, you can catch me, guys, as below. Pugilist Boy on YouTube and Twitter X. Pugilistic Boy on Instagram.
Ladies and gentlemen, BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. You guys know where to find me. There will be a live stream tomorrow, 8 o'clock. If it has to be any later, I'll let you guys know in advance, but it should be 8 o'clock. I'm gonna try and get an episode out in the morning so that you guys can have something to watch on the way to work. But yeah, stream, and then there will be another episode Thursday, Bases Picks Friday, normal stuff. Instagram and Threads, BaseDaKID, Twitter X, B_A_S_S_E, or just type in BaseDaKID and I should pop up on there. But yeah, much love to everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for the super chats today, but we will catch you next week, and I will catch you all tomorrow who do decide to pop over. But until then, peace.
Salute.